Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Packed show today, we're talking about the war in Ukraine, the growing cost of living crisis and how we clamp down on dirty Russian money with both Labour and Conservative MPs. Our security editor investigates the shadowy Russian mercenaries who officially don't exist. I've got a great Real Me interview with the Conservative MP, Scott Benton, that you won't want to miss. That's after the news.
Good afternoon, it's midday. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary says Ukrainian refugees with passports can now apply fully online to come to the UK. It means application centres in Europe can focus on helping those who don't have passports. It's after the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK called on Britain to ditch the bureaucratic red tape. Priti Patel told the Commons she's streamlining the approach to those fleeing the conflict.
From Tuesday, I can announce that Ukrainians with passports will no longer need to go to a visa application centre to give their biometrics before they come to the UK. Instead, once their application has been considered and appropriate checks completed, they will receive direct notification that they are eligible for the scheme and can come to the UK. In short, Ukrainians with passports will be able to get permission to come here fully online from wherever they are, and will be able to give their biometrics once in Britain.
Priti Patel speaking earlier. The Ukrainian president has called an airstrike on a maternity hospital in Mariupol a war crime. It's being reported 3 people died in the attack, including a child, and at least 17 were wounded. The hospital was one of 3 hit by Russian forces yesterday. Boris Johnson says the bombing shows Putin's careless disregard for international humanitarian law. President Zelensky has described the aerial assault as conclusive evidence of genocide.
The air bomb on the maternity hospital is the final proof that the genocide of Ukrainians is taking place. Europeans, you won't be able to say that you didn't see what happened to Ukrainians, what happened to Mariupol residents. You saw, you know. Therefore, you must increase sanctions against Russia so that it no longer has any opportunity to continue this genocide.
Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ministry of Defense says Russia's confirmed it is using vacuum bombs in Ukraine. Powerful thermobaric rockets aren't illegal, but they are strictly regulated. The MOD says it's also likely Russia's deploying private mercenary soldiers. It follows intelligence that Russian troops northwest of Kiev are making little progress and suffering continued losses at the hands of the Ukrainian military. Russia's foreign minister says he doesn't believe there will be a nuclear war and that he's serious about negotiating a settlement with Ukraine. Sergei Lavrov met his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba, in Turkey earlier for the first high-level talks between the two countries since the war began. Ukraine's foreign minister says the talks ended with no progress on a ceasefire. Chelsea Football Club owner Roman Abramovich has been added to the UK sanctions list. Described as a pro-Kremlin oligarch, Mr. Abramovich has been hit with an asset freeze and a travel ban. The government says the licence for Chelsea will be kept under constant review. The club will continue to play their matches. Labour's calling on the government to ramp up its production of green energy in the wake of rising global energy prices. A survey by Compare the Market suggests that a third of families are struggling to pay their household bills. It's as fuel prices hit a record high of 159.6 pence per litre for petrol and 167.4 pence for diesel. The government says it'll unveil its energy supply strategy in the coming days. That's after committing to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of the year. Shadow Business Minister Bill Esterson told GB News how Labour would ease the pressure.
What we're planning is, instead of the government's loan, which has got to be repaid, is a cut in VAT and help for 9 million households to the tune of £600 a year and £200 for everybody. And in addition to that, we think we need a stronger investment in wind energy, in tidal energy, in solar, and to get starts to nuclear in places like Sizewell C.
NHS England says a record 6.1 million people are on waiting lists for routine hospital treatment. Meanwhile, a quarter of patients in England didn't see a specialist within 2 weeks of their GP suspecting they had cancer. That's the highest proportion in records going back to October 2009. The government wants to eliminate waits of more than 52 weeks by 2025. And the Duchess of Cornwall will celebrate the outstanding contribution of volunteers as part of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee year. Organised by the Royal Voluntary Service, of which Camilla is president, the Platinum Champions Awards will recognise those who make a difference to the lives of others. The Duchess says the top winners will be invited to a special edition of the Big Jubilee lunch on June the 5th. This is GB News. We'll have more as it happens. Now back to the briefing with Gloria De Piero.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, I'll be joined by Labour's Emily Thornberry to discuss the refugee crisis and also how families here can be helped as energy prices rocket. We'll discuss clamping down on Russian oligarchs with Conservative MP and anti-corruption champion John Penrose. Our security editor investigates the shadowy Russian mercenary group on the ground in Ukraine. Officially, it doesn't even exist. And I have a real me interview with Conservative MP Scott Benton, which you won't want to miss. He told his parents he was gay just before his wedding last November. 2 weeks after Russia invaded Ukraine, the bombing of Mariupol's maternity hospital yesterday marked a new low. Over 2 million people have now fled for their lives, and some say the UK should be doing much more to take refugees. Joining me now is Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry. Emily, it's good to see you. The Home Secretary this morning is making it much easier for refugees to come here. They won't need to go to a visa application centre if they have a passport, then it can apply digitally to come here. As far as the Labour Party is concerned, is that job done on the UK doing its bit in taking refugees?
I have to say, Gloria, it's not as though this should have taken them by surprise. We have seen this coming for many months now. We've had intelligence to tell us this is what the Russians were going to do. And I can't understand why the government didn't have some sort of plan. You know, we needed to have a bespoke plan for what we were going to do with Ukrainians who wanted to come here. And let's be straight about this. Most Ukrainians are not going to want to come to the UK, but the ones who will be ones who've already got family here and got connections here. And what we've seen is we've seen the Home Office kind of in denial, saying there isn't a problem, that people can apply, there's no, and then, being pointed out to them that there really is. And then they, make a few changes here and a few changes there, a centre that they claim exists, which doesn't exist, and they keep getting caught out. And it's like, as I say, a sausage of salami. They're just kind of slicing and slicing and slicing. Look, we just need a simple way of doing this. If people have biometrics on their passport, I can see no reason why they can't come to the UK, and then we can check them when they're here, and then they can join their family here. We can make it simple and easy. We need to be able to look after people, and we're not. We think there's been a fundamental failure of the Home Office yet again when it comes to doing the right thing. And I know that the British public are kind of ashamed of this. You see what's happening across the rest of Europe, and we are just not helping in the way that we should, that we have a history of doing. These people are fleeing from war, and if they have a member of their family here and they want to be looked after, then why aren't we making it easy for them?
Emily, you are former Shadow Foreign Secretary. President Zelensky has made repeated calls to enforce a no-fly zone. Yesterday, Nicola Sturgeon said the West should be open to that suggestion. What do you think?
I mean, it sounds fine, but actually you have to look at what it means in reality. So in reality, what it means is in order to enforce a no-fly zone, we need to have our British service people in the RAF going up into the skies and dogfighting with Russian planes in order to make sure that they're not, that
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Neil Oliver. You can join me live every Saturday evening for opinions and discussions about the week's top stories. There's also a smattering of history and archaeology and features that define our great British Isles. You'll hear my thoughts unfiltered, as well as those of my guests, and we don't always agree. And we want to hear from you too. Neil Oliver Live, Saturdays from 7 on GB News.
Well, I was brought up in a Christian home, and that was a big part of my upbringing, really, and particularly, I suppose, very much a focus on on character and values and virtues. So I was quite a high achiever at school. I did really well in lots of things. You know, I was one of those lucky people who just enjoyed school and it really suited me. But what my parents really emphasised was character, how we treated each other, you know, whether we said sorry and forgave each other when we fall out, as all families do, honesty, integrity, those kind of things. And I suppose that's what I've carried with me. I think, you know, those things are so important in our, not just our personal lives, but in our national life as well. The virtues, the characters, it sounds really old-fashioned, but actually if we treat each other properly, then everything else follows from that. So yeah, faith and the teachings that come out of it have played a big part in my life.
And how do you practice your faith? Are you a churchgoer? Is it daily prayer?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, I'm churchgoer, read the Bible, you know, all those kind of things that people would see as religious. But for me, it's much more alive than that. I suppose as a Christian, I think, yes, it's about reading the Bible, knowing about my faith, understanding theology and things like that. But it's more about a sense of purpose and having a living relationship with Jesus and, you know, just following that day by day. And I think it gives me a real strength because as politicians, as you know, we come under a lot of attack and frequently we make decisions where we're not actually 100% sure. You know, we weigh things up, but is this the right way to vote? And I think having that security of knowing that I believe in something bigger and something higher is really, really important and actually helps cope with the day-to-day ups and downs of political life.
What are the biggest ups of political life?
No 2 days are the same. The things that you learn about and become involved in are just amazing. And the influence.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
I'm Darryl McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darryl.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darryl McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date.
The The Home Secretary Priti Patel has this morning announced to the House of Commons that from Tuesday, Ukrainians with passports will not need to go to a visa application centre and can apply online. I'm delighted to be joined now by Rehman Chishti, Conservative MP for Gillingham and Rainham. Hello, thank you very much for being with us. In your view, has Priti Patel now done enough to ensure that the UK is doing its fair bit in terms of taking refugees?
Well, Gloria, can I just say this as the first opportunity to comment on the situation as to see what's happened in Ukraine last night with regards to the loss of innocent lives, where we saw the callous, barbaric behaviour of President Putin with regards to targeting innocent children and women with regards to his warped ideology and aggression towards the Ukrainian people. So at this particular point in time, one's thoughts, like all those around the world, who have care and regard for humanity, is with the Ukrainian people. With regards to your specific question, is on the Priti Patel's recent statement. Look, we're dealing with a rapidly changing, evolving situation day by day. We're into day 14 of this conflict. And I think the measures announced by the Home Secretary today, of course, are to be welcomed with regards to saying, the situation with individuals who have Ukrainian passports. You don't need to go to a visa centre. You could do it online. And I think that, of course, has to be welcomed to make it quicker, speedier, swifter to help those who need this help. But also, I would say the situation for the United Kingdom is putting forward resources across other parts of Europe. Say, for example, the largest number of individuals coming out from Ukraine are through Poland and through Romania, to ensure that our resources, with regards to ability of officials to deal with that volume. So I think a few days back, a week ago, we were dealing about processing 600 cases. Then that went up to 6,000, ability to process. And now I think it's up to 13,000. So I think the combined approach to where we are now, I think, of course, the new measures got to be welcomed. But, of course, day by day, as the situation changes, we're doing what we need to do at this point in time. But, of course, we should look at doing more as time moves on.
OK. Let's talk about the cost of living. Asked about the impact of sanctions on Russia for British people, the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, told you guys, MPs, yesterday, he believed the public was, I quote, willing to endure hardships in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Frankly, it's easy for him to say, isn't it? He's well paid, as we are.
I think the question, Gloria, on this is, what do I think the great British people stand for? The great British people stand for freedom, for liberty, for standing up and doing the right thing. Because remember, we were in a similar situation in the Second World War, when our backs were against the war and we were fighting for our freedom. And if we saw what President Zelensky said to members of parliament, he said, fellow citizens around the world who believe in civility and civilization need your help and support. So do I think, with regards to the measures the government will have to take, there will, of course, be a knock-on effect with regards to what happens in Ukraine and the issue about energy reliance from Russia to Europe. And also, I think for us here in the UK, it's about 4% on gas and 8% on oil that we have from Russia. We have to be self-sustainable, and the government is, moving in that direction through renewable energy, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's, wind, whether it's solar. But of course, there will be a knock-on effect for standing up for freedom and liberty, in what's going on in Ukraine to back here in the UK. But answering your question, do I think the government is in a position to put forward measures to support those, economically, with regards to the cost of living? And we've saw that with a 20 billion package put forward by the government to support individuals, whether it's with energy prices, whether that's with supporting individuals on low income, increasing living wage. So I would say these are difficult, challenging times, but can there be any compromise on standing up and doing the right thing by standing up to the aggression of President Putin? And the answer to that is no. Therefore, what you just quoted by Kwasi Kwarteng to say there will be tough times with regards to how we will be affected.
Why would ordinary people be paying for those tough times? The energy companies have been making record profits. Why not tax them more and help to cushion the blow on those people who are hurting and are going to hurt further?
Well, I think what we are doing is with regards to moving away from energy reliance in Russia. But of course, the situation on that being as frank as I possibly can, you can't do that straight overnight, and therefore increasing renewable energy across the board, but having package of economic measures available to support up to 20 billion for the British people, I think, across sectors, whether that's with, assisting with energy prices going up, whether it's with regards to the national insurance contributions, which will increase, ensuring that those on lower income, are supported in that as well.
Rehman, chishti.
Pleasure.
First time on the show. I hope it'll be the first appearance of many.
Look forward to coming back.
Thank
and we
you
miss you in
so
Parliament.
Thanks so much, very kind. On Monday, the economic crime bill was rushed through the Commons in an attempt to make it harder for Russian oligarchs to hide their assets. Joining me now is UK anti-corruption champion and Conservative MP John Penrose. It's good to see you, John Penrose. Thank you for your time. Roman Abramovich has been sanctioned by the UK government, one of 7 more Russian oligarchs who have had sanctions placed on them today. Just explain how that might help stop Russia invading Ukraine.
Well, because there's a bunch of Putin's cronies, and it now looks as though people like Abramovich are part of that list, who've got dirty money stashed in the UK, often invested in posh London penthouse flats and those sorts of things. And we can't make the sanctions really bite hard and strongly if we don't know where the cash is. You can't sanction something you can't see. And so the emergency legislation that's just been going through Parliament in the course of the last couple of days, as you rightly pointed out just now, is a way to sort of rip aside the veils of anonymity and which stop you from seeing who owns what. And that means that we can follow the money, literally, and we can find out where it is. And it means that these different oligarchs won't have anywhere to hide their cash. And that means, therefore, that Putin, who's effectively running a bit of a sort of a mafia state, frankly, in Russia, he'll find that an awful lot of his henchmen are suddenly a great deal poorer than they were. And at that point, they're going to start looking at each other and going, well, has the old man lost his touch? Has he made the most terrible error of judgment? And of course, we all think he has. We want to prove that to him. And this is one way to get their attention and to make sure that they start to ask the question, and he has to perhaps to look over his shoulder at home as well.
I'm just going to ask you the same question that I asked to your colleague, Rehman Chishti, referring to Kwasi Kwarteng's comments yesterday in the House of Commons. He is, of course, the business secretary. He told MPs the public was willing to endure hardships in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Now, frankly, it's easy for people who earn a lot of money, a good living, like we do, to say things like that, isn't it? But the truth is that more help is going to be needed to cushion the blow for those who simply can't afford to do that.
I think both those two statements are probably right at the same time. So I think people kind of get it. They do understand that this is kind of a sort of, without wanting to sound too melodramatic, it's a bit of a battle for civilization. This is democracies under attack, and democracies in Europe under attack. So it's really close to home as well. So people get that. We have to stand up to this. We can't look the other way. We do have to draw a line and say, yeah, enough is enough. You cannot do this again. You've done it in Syria. You've done it in other bits of Ukraine in the past. This has got to stop. So people get that, and they're willing to be, I think, to be put to inconvenience and, if necessary, to make some sacrifices. But at the same time, and this is the other part of your question, you're quite right to make the point. It should be up to all of us, policymakers, doesn't matter if it's in local government or central government, to try and minimise the cost of that, the pain of that sacrifice. And so therefore what we've got to do, it's very difficult to do things in the short term, but in the medium term what we've got to do is to come up with things which reduce the cost of energy bills, not just for households, but actually for companies as well, because ultimately they're the ones that employ us all, give us our jobs, give us our incomes. We've got to come up with ways to reduce those bills so that we are less reliant on international gas, because ultimately that's the thing that's being pushed up by what's happening in Russia and Ukraine.
Let's have a look at the options, and I'm afraid it'll have to be a brief answer. Former Prime Minister, leader of your party, David Cameron, last night urged Rishi Sunak to cut taxes to tackle the rising cost of living. Is that an option that you would favour?
It's an option, but it's really a dangerous one. I mean, I'm a low-tax Tory. I like the idea of cutting taxes whenever anybody suggests it. But we've also got to make sure that we are a party of sound money. You can't just run up the nation's credit card and do a load of borrowing, because that just puts the problem off and basically hands the bill to our children and to our grandchildren. So we can't just sort of, borrow willy-nilly. And the difficulty is that if you start moving the cost of this around from, for example, energy bills onto the tax bill or the other way around, all that's doing is just moving money from one pocket to another. It doesn't actually solve the underlying problem, which is how do we make the bills lower in the first place? That's the fundamental issue which we've all got to wrestle with. And that's the thing that we're just going to have to build an awful lot more renewable energy and generation capacity in this country. That's the answer over the medium term, not something you can do in a week or a day.
John Penrose, I wish we had more time. Please come back soon. Thank you for your time. Next, our security editor has a special report on the shadowy Russian mercenaries carrying out attacks in Ukraine. Plus, I've got a great Real Meat interview with Conservative MP Scott Benton. First, it's the news.
Thank you, Gloria. It's 12:28. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary says Ukrainian refugees with passports can now apply fully online to come to the UK. It's after the Ukrainian ambassador called on Britain to ditch the bureaucratic red tape. Priti Patel says security checks will still take place, but biometric data can be gathered in the UK rather than at a visa application centre. US Vice President Kamala Harris has announced America will give another $50 million to Ukraine for humanitarian aid. Speaking alongside the Polish president in Warsaw, she also said America's delivered Patriot missile systems to Poland, which can track and intercept ballistic missiles. She added that America is prepared to defend every inch of NATO territory. The Ukrainian president has called an airstrike on a maternity hospital in Mariupol a war crime. It's being reported 3 people died in the attack, including a child, and at least 17 people wounded. The hospital is one of 3 hit by Russian forces yesterday. Sports Minister Nadine Dorries says that if Chelsea is sold, Roman Abramovich must not benefit. The football club owner was added to the UK sanctions list this morning. Described as a pro-Kremlin oligarch, he's been hit with an asset freeze and a travel ban. Chelsea's games will go ahead as planned. In other news, a survey by Compare the Market suggests that a third of families are struggling to pay their household bills. It's as fuel prices hit a record high of 159.6 pence per litre for petrol and 167.4 pence for diesel. NHS England says a record 6.1 million people are on waiting lists for routine hospital treatments. Meanwhile, a quarter of patients in England didn't see a specialist within 2 weeks of their GP suspecting they had cancer. That's the highest proportion in records going back to October 2009. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. It's back to the briefing with Gloria De Piero in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Atrocities in the Ukraine get more horrific every day. Our security editor, Matt White, has been investigating the secret group of Russian mercenaries on the ground in the country.
A shadowy organisation gathering hard facts on the activities of the Wagner Group is far from easy. But they are, we've been told, active in Ukraine, likely involved in highly dubious activities. However, as Moscow doesn't even acknowledge their existence, Vladimir Putin has plausible deniability of whatever they're up to. The founder and leader of the group is a sinister, shaven-headed fellow by the name of Dmitry Utkin, a former senior officer in Russia's Spetsnaz Special Forces. Indeed, the Wagner name, we're told, is derived from his Spetsnaz code name, which apparently reflects his appreciation of the Third Reich and Hitler's favourite composer. Under Russian law, private military companies are illegal, publicly at least.
To call them a company would be a stretch, as there are no visible traces of this company existing. However, it has been deemed as an asset of plausible deniability by the Kremlin to be utilised for their various different conflicts around the world. And they've been active not only in Central Africa, Venezuela, Syria, but also other parts of the world where it may be, again, for various reasons, not pragmatic for the Russian government to utilise their own state troops.
It was during deployments here in Syria and Central Africa several years ago that Wagner Group mercenaries were linked to allegations of war crimes, including torture, rape and murder. The wider group is now believed to be under the ownership of Yevgeny Prigozhin, a former criminal and billionaire restaurant owner nicknamed Putin Chef. He's one of a number of Russian elites facing Western sanctions. The West does, of course, also employ the services of private military contractors, groups like the US company Blackwater. Some of their employees were convicted and later pardoned in the killing of a number of Iraqi civilians in 2007. But Western contractors are at least regulated, and there's official oversight of their activities, unlike their Russian counterparts.
We've used private security companies to guard diplomats. We use them in Iraq, we the West that is, use them in Iraq, but mostly for non-military operations. The ones we're talking about here, that doesn't apply to. They're a different breed, if you like, and they're operating under different conditions. Whether they're accountable to the local military commanders on the ground or whether they're working back to some organisation in Moscow or elsewhere, I honestly don't know. But the reality is that in no way are they accountable in the same way that we in the West make our private companies accountable.
So are Wagner Group mercenaries now actively hunting Ukraine's leadership, including President Zelensky? Some with knowledge of their activities certainly believe so.
From what we understand in Ukraine right now, there is a kill team that are undertaking potential assassinations against key persons, including obviously Zelensky, that are very vocal in the charge for both morale for Ukrainian people, but also for the international community.
Whether their mission actually includes a leadership assassination command, defence and security analysts have told us they will certainly be involved in sabotage, false flag operations, and the likely interrogation and torture of captured Ukrainians, the kind of dirty jobs Vladimir Putin might want to publicly distance himself from.
Matt White there. Now it's time for my latest Real Me interview with Conservative MP Scott Benton, who opened up about how he came out as gay to his family just before his wedding last year.
Scott Benton, so interesting that you studied theology as an undergraduate and then did a master's in theology. Is that because faith is a big part of your life?
Yes, absolutely. Faith's a huge part of my life, and it always has been. I always thought at one stage, funnily enough, at university, I was going to become an Anglican priest. Some of my friends still quote that back to me, the fact that I've got a calling of a different kind, obviously going into politics, rather than the church. And I mean, in terms of my daily life in politics and the job, it certainly keeps me grounded. I think having a faith is good as a politician, and more broadly, because again, not only installs an important set of values, but after a bad day, it sometimes puts everything into perspective. There is a bigger picture beyond the latest government headlines or the latest policy. So it's incredibly helpful to me. I love my degree at university as well. In my master's, I specialise in the Old Testament. It's still my favourite book to read. Narrative of Joshua, Judges, Samuel and Kings is a part of Israel occupying the Holy Land, and some of those stories are absolutely fascinating. It's the best piece of literature which has ever been produced. There's something in there for all times, all seasons in life, and always something for good or for bad to reflect upon in the Bible.
Do you go to church?
I do. I go to a variety of different churches. So this weekend, just gone, I went to 2 different churches in the constituency. I've got over 40 churches in the patch, so I tend to try and get round as many as I possibly can. I don't have a fixed church, I have to admit, but the services I enjoy mostly are what people could describe as the happy, clappy churches. And when I was in university in Nottingham, I went to a brilliant Pentecostal church where everybody gets off the seats, cheering, clapping, loud music playing. It was almost like a nightclub. I've been to quite a nightclubs, believe it or not, than I have this Pentecostal church in Nottingham. And I think it's those types of churches which sometimes really install a bit of joy into people's lives, not diminishing the more traditional forms of worship, but I think for young people in a society which is becoming less and less religious, I think there's a reason why those churches are growing, particularly in places like Nottingham, Bristol, London. Some of the cities have a lot higher church-going rate than more traditional parts of the country, and I would expect that trend to continue. But that's what I enjoy doing when I go to church.
Do you pray every day?
I do. I pray for not only sort of guidance in my own life, but also politically as well, especially when it comes to some key votes ahead, such as COVID legislation, a number of different factors to weigh up. And I think seeking guidance as far as sort of weighing up those different votes and thoughts and different opinions on either side, I do find that very, very helpful.
Interesting. You're gay. Tell me when you came out.
Well, funnily enough, only just before I was married. So my friends have known, close friends have known for a number of years, but I told my parents just before I got married, which was last year.
Wow.
So I think it was a shock in some regards, but probably less so in other aspects. And they were very, very supportive. And I got married in November last year. So it was a classic lockdown romance, if you like, for want of a better thing, whilst obeying all COVID rules and restrictions, naturally, at various points over the last 2 years. And yeah, we had a lovely ceremony in the House of Commons, which was in November. And funnily enough, the Speaker imposed some rules about not being able to have outside events in Parliament at the beginning of November, and we were very worried the ceremony wouldn't actually take place. So it was a bit of a last-minute thing when we finally got the green light days ahead and everything fell into place. But enjoying married life, it certainly adds a bit of perspective, because before then, before I was in a relationship, I used to probably spend 80 hours a week on the job. Every spare moment of the day was responding to emails and canvassing. So I think it does help to have a bit more of a well-rounded view of life, and obviously having a marriage and a partner's part of that. I'm stunned that you only told your parents last year. This is not... You tell me whatever you want to tell me, and if you tell me it's none of my business, then that's fine too, because it's not the point of these interviews to make anybody feel uncomfortable about what they do and what they don't want to say. But what did you wrestle with coming out? Is that why you came out so recently? I think it's every person's different, and people when they grow up gay or straight have different challenges in life. I think people from the LGBT background often have particular challenges when they're growing up, which sometimes the media and different people within society don't fully acknowledge or understand. Having a faith sometimes makes that equally hard to reconcile the two. So I always said if I was in a position to commit to a long-term partner, obviously I would make sure the most important people in my life knew about that, but it's a very personal decision for many people, including me. So I think I made the correct decision to let people know when I was fully ready, and that just happened to be when I was ready to walk down the aisle, so to speak, with the person I loved.
Well, I'm pleased that you're very happy in your marriage. Has your sexuality, has there ever been a conflict with your faith? I spoke to Wes Streeting some time ago, and he also has faith, and he said, he came out much earlier than you, but he said there was a conflict for him.
I think there is for most people who are religious, not just the Christian faith, but other faiths as well. Judaism and Islam both have particular views on gay people and homosexuality as well. So it is difficult. When you read the traditional scriptures, when you go to some Christian churches within the UK who still have a very definitive view on the issue, I think it can sometimes be hard for people growing up and reconciling their own personality, their own feelings, and with what they sometimes perceive to be how they should be in life, or what the church sometimes wants people to be. So it is a very, very difficult process, I think, for people of faith who are from the LGBT community to reconcile the two. Again, it's all part of growing up, not just within your Christian faith, but more broadly as a person as well. And it's an interesting point within society because we haven't really settled that issue as far as church teaching and homosexuality or marriage is concerned. Churches have varying different views on the issue. And of course, you still can't get married as a gay man within a church, which personally I feel is a correct approach. I think legislating for same-sex marriage was the right thing to do. Obviously, varying countries have done it at different points as well. But ultimately, we couldn't have a position where the government would force the Roman Catholic Church or the Anglican Church to conduct same-sex marriages, because there is a sphere of what the government thinks is appropriate in society, but there's also a religious realm as well. And I think it's quite natural that churches and different organisations move at their own speed and do what they are comfortable with. So I would always support their decisions to insist on their teachings in this area, as well as different areas of public life as well.
For those politicians with faith, abortion can also be an issue. Is it for you?
Abortion is an issue for me. I remember one of the first public speeches I gave was at university to a pro-life audience on the issue as well. So obviously people have their own different views on abortion, but my concern is sometimes we speak about people's rights in society, but sometimes the most vulnerable of all people and human beings within society is sometimes forgotten, and there's nobody more vulnerable than an innocent unborn child as well. And of course, we need to preserve and protect the rights of mothers and women, but there's also a second part to this as well, and that's encouraging people to seek the proper advice if they do fall pregnant and maybe they don't want a child. There's other ways of doing things as well. And I think sometimes we don't hear enough about that other side of the argument and the rights of the unborn child. It's something I do feel very strongly about, and not just faith-based as well. I think if I wasn't a Christian, I'd still generally have the same view as many people on the socially conservative right of the Conservative Party and the Republicans in the US do. But again, this is an issue which hasn't been fully resolved either at the moment. The government's making a decision about whether the COVID regulations regarding abortion should lapse or become permanent as well. So again, this is very much a live topic upon which different people have different opinions. But the key thing is, whether it be Conservative or Labour, that people are able to speak freely on the issue, because rightly so, it's not a party-whipped issue. It's not something where you should always hold the party line. People naturally have their own views on it, and I think they have a right to express those as well.
Now, you expressed a very controversial position in December, so just a couple of months ago, you said that you would support the death penalty in certain scenarios. Was that something that you just said because you happened to be on television that day, or is that a long thought through, sincerely held view that you have had?
It's the latter, Gloria. It's a view I've had for many, many days and many, many years. In fact, I remember having a sixth form debate on the issue when we were in the sociology A-level class. I've always thought it quite bizarre that people who commit the most heinous evil acts in society, as a society or a community, we don't feel it appropriate to reflect our revulsion or disgust at the seriousness of those crimes by meriting the only viable option on the table, which is to show our disappointment, disgust, and that would be to take that person's life away, to feel and to show as a society how awful that crime is. And I think there are a number of different incidents and appalling acts, both here and in America over the last few years, the killing of Lee Rigby, for example, where the vast majority of people are so revulsed by that crime that there's only one fitting punishment, and that would be the death penalty. And it's something which I know the vast majority of your viewers and my constituents would support as well. And sometimes in politics, you can't say the unthinkable or the unspeakable. And this is certainly one of those points, the death penalty, where there would be many MPs, predominantly in the Conservative Party, who think the same, but who aren't necessarily prepared to put their head above the power pit and to go on the record. I think the Home Secretary, for example, is one person who's expressed similar views in the past. And I'm not likening it to Brexit because Brexit took its own natural way. I don't think we'll ever have the death penalty restored in the UK for good or for bad. But sometimes in public life, when somebody commits an awful act and politicians speak in favour of the death penalty, it can alter the debate. And there will be people listening at home, Gloria, who think, well, thank goodness somebody else has actually expressed my view in public life and who hasn't held to the politically correct version of what people can and cannot say. And if I do nothing in politics, having public debates on these issues and being somebody who's prepared to say the unspeakable, that's certainly something I would look to do.
You are elected at a time when one of your colleagues, Sir David Amess, is murdered. That came just a few years after the Labour Party MP, Joe Cox, was murdered, both at constituency surgeries. Do you feel safe in this job?
Yes and no, to tell you the honest truth. So, for example, Gloria, MPs now have access to security guards at constituency surgeries. So I've had some of those when I've been at Asda or local supermarket precincts or wherever, and rightfully so, because we are in the public profile and people hold different views, especially when there are contentious headlines and stories in the press and people want to rightly expose those and give themselves a platform to have those views. Having said that, I think the level of vitriol and opposition MPs face, fueled in a large part by social media and some of the press, I think has got to a point where there will be MPs who ask themselves, do I really want to be in this job anymore? Do I want to receive the abuse on social media, in the mailbox? I do, week in, week out. And just to tell you a story which happened on Friday, so only last week, I was out knocking on doors in the constituency like I do 2 or 3 times a week, and one gentleman came to the door, had the usual full and frank conversation with a few swear words. And normally, a few years ago, that would have been it. The door would have been closed, he would have gone inside, and that was it. Well, that gentleman followed me and my team down the street, shouting abuse with a placard. And when we were speaking to people on the doorstep, he got up to members of the public, don't trust these man, don't trust these people. And he was extremely violent and aggressive. And you could tell whether or not he had something going on in his life, who knows. But it clearly wasn't a person who was at ease with himself or indeed society. And in the end, I had to call the police to come and have a word with this gentleman because he just was not leaving my team and I alone. And we did feel threatened. He was extremely intimidating, and you could have easily have envisaged a scenario where that position or situation would have moved on to become something very, very different. And if I say that's the second time in 6 months when my team and I have been out canvassing and we've had to call the police because somebody has been extremely rude, violent and intimidating and has followed us down the street for a number of 10 or 15 minutes, shouting abuse, and who hasn't left us alone. That gives you an indication of the level of opposition MPs face when we're going about doing our daily jobs.
How quickly did the police get to you on both those occasions?
The first time, which was September last year, about 5 or 6 squad cars came within about 10 minutes, so it was quite an incident. It was about 20 minutes on Friday before the police arrived. It was 2 PCSO officers, and a lot can happen in 20 minutes for good or for bad. So that was a bit concerning. And I do know from speaking to other colleagues, people have encountered this on the doorstep as well at surgeries. It's not just one story from one individual MP. And I'd like to think I can handle myself. I grew up in a tough working class environment in Yorkshire. So I don't mind knocking on doors in the most difficult of places within the constituency and having full and frank conversations with people. But there becomes a stage when people follow you for 15 minutes and are violent and within 6 inches of your face shouting abuse when that does become too much. And that's my concern going forward, not just around social media, not just around the highly charged debates, but we have to strive as a society to have fruitful and difficult conversations politically, but to do so in a position where members of the public don't come up to MPs in that manner, because nobody deserves that.
What should happen to those people that do threaten MPs?
Well, we've got different Acts of Parliament going through at the moment around online safety. I think there's far more the government need to look at in terms of a political debate. I'm never one for censorship, but there becomes a point when certain people, from often anonymised accounts, are spreading hatred, vile and abuse. I think that does need to be tackled. And I think we have to make it clear and strive to, especially following the tragic events, not just of Joe, but of David as well. The government have to make it clear that MPs need to be properly protected and they need to be able to go about their jobs as public representatives and sometimes say controversial and difficult things without being placed in a threatening position.
How could you be better protected, finally?
Well, I think the Speaker and Parliament have done everything they reasonably can on this position, on this point. And let's not forget, there's only so much you can do. If you want to be in a safe seat and lock yourself away in an ivory tower and just go to a couple of market events every year, then obviously the risk to you is far less. If you're in a marginal seat like me and you love your community and want to go out and meet people on the doorstep, because when I stand up in House of Commons, I say, people of Blackpool want this. Well, how do you know if you don't go out and speak to people? So for people like me who sometimes are in a more difficult and dangerous position than colleagues who don't have to be as proactive, I think we do have to look at some elements of security again. And there's going to be difficult questions and debates around the taxpayer and what's reasonable to support that. But at the end of the day, what price democracy and what price protecting those who are in the public domain fighting for constituents' rights. So I think that's something which will obviously move on, and people have different thoughts on that, but we need to have a debate in Parliament on that issue.
Very straight talking. Some people will love what you said. Some people you'll create a right Twitter storm by some of the things that you said. That's life as an MP.
Indeed.
But thank you for your straight talking. Thank you, Scott Benton.
You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Isabel Oakeshott will be here tomorrow at noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. That is after your weather.
Hello, quite a lot of cloud across the country today. It's a breezy one for many of us, but it is on the mild side, and there will be a little bit of brightness, particularly in the far east and the far west. Now, at the moment, we have this large area of high pressure across the continent, and that's blocking these weather fronts. So those weather fronts pushing up against the high pressure, they've got nowhere to go. So they're just sticking around for quite some time. And that's the reason for all this cloud across the country, outbreaks of patchy light rain or drizzle at times associated with that cloud. But as I mentioned, there will be some brightness around, particularly for western extremities of the country, and also parts of East Anglia and South East England are likely to see some sunshine through the course of the day. Temperature-wise, on the mild side, but it will be quite a breezy one for most of us. Now through this evening and overnight we keep hold of this cloud, further outbreaks of rain or drizzle at times. In fact, there could be some heavier bursts through the course of the night tonight. Still a few clearer spells, but they will be fairly limited. And with all that cloud around, it will be a mild night for just about all of us. So it starts tomorrow on quite a cloudy note, and again there will be some outbreaks of rain at times, but tomorrow we see this area of low pressure pushing in from the southwest, and this will introduce some more persistent rain at times. That will gradually push northwards through the course of the day, and there could be some heavier bursts within that. So again, quite a cloudy day, outbreaks of rain, and then turning showery as that weather front clears through across more southwestern parts of the country, and some of those showers could be on the heavy side. It will be a windy day for just about all of us tomorrow, but again, temperatures above where they would normally be at this time of year, and that's because of the southerly airflow. And there's very little change actually as we head into the weekend, remaining cloudy and fairly breezy, but generally on the mild side. Bye for now.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's story the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week.